Have you ever noticed how often we lose ourselves in small battles, in arguments that change nothing, in distractions that drain our energy like sand slipping through our fingers? We spend days postponing decisions, piling up unfinished tasks, defending opinions with no real impact, as if tomorrow were guaranteed. But what if it's not? Imagine waking up each day with the conviction that you are in charge of your thoughts, emotions, and actions. Imagine living untouched by other people's opinions, unshaken by external chaos, guided only by what's inside you. Picture a day where every choice grows out of your deepest values, where your responses come from clarity and purpose, not fleeting impulses. Sounds distant? The Stoics proved it's possible. Even in the heart of storms, they realized order always begins within. Chaos doesn't suddenly explode, it builds up when we neglect what is essential. It's like leaving the door of your soul open in the middle of a storm. Before you notice, you're already living in the mess you allowed in. Stoicism is not some dusty philosophy locked in libraries. It's a living map, a practical tool to cut away what doesn't serve you and bring your life back on track. No magic promises, but daily discipline that shapes character and strengthens the spirit. Today, I want to share 15 Stoic lessons that can give you back the control, calm, and direction you've been searching for. Write in the comments, "Today I choose to align my life from the inside out." This might be the turning point in your story. Let's begin. Lesson 1: The illusion of future happiness. There's a seductive trap that seems harmless but robs you of energy like a silent thief, believing happiness will only come in the future. We think, when I get that job, when I find the right person, when everything falls into place, then I'll be happy. Without realizing it, we turn life into an endless waiting room. The present loses its value, becoming just a rehearsal for a play that may never be performed. In this game, happiness is always an unfulfilled promise, a station that moves further away the closer we think we get. The Stoics saw this as poison. Not because it's wrong to desire things, but because outsourcing your peace to external conditions is like handing the keys of your house to a stranger. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations in the middle of wars. Epictetus, even as a slave, already lived with inner freedom. Seneca, surrounded by threats of death, spoke about serenity. None of them waited for the world to calm down to live with purpose. They understood life doesn't begin when everything is solved. Life is happening now. For them, happiness wasn't a destination, it was a practice. A daily, quiet habit of finding meaning with what you have, right where you are. When you see this, you realize the emptiness you feel isn't the absence of something external, but the absence of inner presence. The antidote? Amor fati, love your fate. Not as passive resignation, but as an act of strength, a conscious choice to live fully even from an imperfect starting point. Love what is, while building what can be. Think about it. How long did your last long for achievement actually make you feel complete? Days, maybe hours. That's not your failure, it's human nature. But the Stoics already knew, trying to fill the soul only with external victories is like trying to fill a leaky cup. Happiness is not out there waiting for the right occasion. It's here, ready to be cultivated like a muscle that grows through small, conscious choices. Writing, practicing gratitude, meditating, calmly resolving something you've been putting off. It doesn't demand a perfect setting, just presence. And when you live this way, even on hard days, you discover life doesn't need to smile at you first. You can be the one who smiles at it. Lesson 2: The myth of eternal motivation. We live in an age that idolizes motivation as if it were the essential fuel for any achievement. We've been taught to believe that action only matters when we feel inspired, as if emotional excitement were a requirement for progress. But that's a sophisticated trap, a sweet poison that makes us dependent on something unstable. What happens on the days when motivation doesn't show up? We postpone, make excuses, promise ourselves tomorrow will be different. Meanwhile, time keeps moving. The Stoics never relied on this shifting wind called motivation. They knew it comes and goes like the tide. Marcus Aurelius, leading an empire at war, couldn't wait for inspiration to govern. Epictetus didn't need enthusiasm to teach philosophy. Seneca, surrounded by danger and betrayal, didn't depend on good vibes to live with purpose. What guided them was discipline, that steady rudder that keeps the course even when the skies darken. Acting only when you feel motivated is disguised procrastination. Discipline doesn't demand the perfect scenario, only a decision. It's choosing to be the kind of person who does what they say, even without the mood, even tired, even with a mind full of excuses. But discipline isn't blind rigidity. It's intelligent consistency. It's not about punishing yourself when you fail, but about recommitting to what you've already defined as essential. The Stoics practiced this with simple routines. Marcus Aurelius wrote daily, anticipating obstacles, vaccinating his mind against surprises. Another practice was listing 3 non-negotiable actions for the next day each evening. Simple, yet aligned with purpose. These tasks work like anchors in the middle of chaos. Even when everything slips out of your control, you still do what truly matters. Not out of desire, but out of decision. They also used premeditatio malorum, imagining difficulties ahead of time. Not pessimism, but preparation. When you've already thought about the obstacles, they lose the power to paralyze you. Following through even when you don't feel like it is a deep act of self-respect. It builds inner trust. Over time, motivation shows up, but as a consequence, not a condition. The act of starting is what sparks the engine. Constant motivation is a myth. We are creatures of habit. What we repeat matters more than what we feel. Discipline is the bridge between dream and achievement. Crossing it daily, even on gray days, builds a coherent life. Motivation may fail. Discipline, if nurtured, will always be there. Lesson 3: The hidden strength of the present moment. We spend our lives chasing energy, clarity, and focus, yet waste most of it in 2 barren places, the past and the future. We replay mistakes, anticipate pain, invent problems that may never exist. Each of these detours drains something essential. It's like trying to fill a cup with invisible holes. You get tired, but you don't move forward. The Stoics understood that there is only one fertile ground for action, the present. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we live only in this moment. The rest, memories or predictions, is not in our control. This doesn't mean despising the past or neglecting the future, but refusing to let either hijack the now. When the mind lives outside the present, we gather experiences as if storing objects in boxes we never open. Life goes by, but it's not lived. Emptiness doesn't come from a lack of events, but from the absence of presence. To reclaim this energy, the Stoics practiced simple habits. A conscious pause. Before reacting, take a deep breath, feel your body, feel the moment. Open your senses, notice the light through the window, the distant sounds, the rhythm of your breath. Seneca advised living with such attention that even the simplest act becomes sacred, because no moment ever returns. Another transformative practice: live the day as a complete unit. Ask yourself, if this were my last day, how would I live it? Not to dramatize, but to cut away excess and focus on what matters. When you see the day as a cycle that closes, you don't need to solve your whole life, you only need to honor the hours ahead. This turns the present from a waiting room into a stage of action. And curiously, when we anchor ourselves in the now, the lost energy comes back. Not because time expands, but because we stop giving it away to what doesn't exist. The past is a teacher, the future is a map. But only in the present do we plant and harvest. In a world where everyone is fighting for our attention, protecting the present moment is an act of personal sovereignty. Lesson 4: When sadness is hidden wisdom. We live surrounded by forced smiles, shallow self-help phrases, and the idea that feeling sad is a failure. We've learned to hide pain as if it were shameful, but the Stoics saw something deeper, a stern teacher that doesn't comfort but instructs. Sadness can become an abyss when it is static, repetitive, when it only replays the same pain without transformation. In that state, we become prisoners of unreal stories, clinging to what was lost. But there is another kind of sadness, the one the Stoics embraced. A sadness that doesn't run from pain but observes it, reflects on it, reveals its truth. It doesn't bring quick relief, but it offers clarity. It's a lighthouse in the dark. Marcus Aurelius, even in the face of losing loved ones and carrying the burden of leading an empire in crisis, didn't avoid sadness. He wrote about it to understand it, to gain perspective, knowing nothing was guaranteed. Epictetus, marked by slavery and illness, taught that it's not the event itself that hurts us, but the judgment we attach to it. Seneca, exiled and hunted, didn't deny his emotions, but examined them. Sadness, when faced with honesty, shows us whether we suffer from attachment, unrealistic expectation, or something genuinely valuable that needs transformation. The Stoics practiced the view from above, imagining life from a higher perspective, seeing pain, triumphs, and losses as parts of a larger story. Seen this way, suffering stops being endless. It becomes a hard, but finite, chapter. This perspective doesn't erase the feeling, but prevents pain from becoming absolute. For that, one must train when the waters are calm, so that when storms come, the mind knows where to anchor. Useful sadness is the one that points to growth, like when the end of a relationship reveals the need to strengthen self-love. It doesn't numb, it matures. It's uncomfortable, yes, but like a cold rain that washes the dust away. The Stoics walked with sadness only as long as needed to learn, and then let it go. A simple practice: write what you feel, ask what this emotion is trying to teach, then adopt the view from above. Sadness is not a system failure, it's part of being alive. Denying it means losing an opportunity. Clinging to it is a prison. But moving through it with attention can make you stronger and wiser. Lesson 5: The power of accepting the inevitable. There's an invisible exhaustion that doesn't show up in tests but eats away at the soul, fighting against the inevitable. It's like pushing a wall every day expecting it to fall. Many people live trapped in this effort, trying to force reality into the shape of their expectations. While the struggle drags on, life keeps moving, indifferent. The Stoics saw this as one of the greatest wastes of energy. Not because we must passively accept everything, but because insisting on changing what cannot be changed is pouring strength into barren soil. Acceptance is a strategic act. It redirects energy toward what is fertile. Epictetus explained it with a metaphor: a dog tied to a moving cart. He can resist and be dragged, or he can walk along. The cart is reality. The dog is the will. The path will be the same, but the suffering won't. Marcus Aurelius summed it up: love what happens to you, for it was woven into your destiny. This is a more fatty love of fate. Not as submission, but as transforming the inevitable into an opportunity for virtue. The key lies in the dichotomy of control, distinguishing what depends on us, our thoughts, decisions, actions, from what doesn't, the opinions of others, the weather, chance. Frustration is born when we confuse these two. We try to control the uncontrollable, and when we fail, we blame ourselves or the world. This mistake costs dearly. It steals serenity, time, and clarity. Training the mind to release what is beyond our control is liberating. It's not easy. It requires noticing inner dialogues like "it shouldn't be this way" or "it's not fair," phrases that sound reasonable but keep us stuck in unwinnable battles. Acceptance doesn't mean approving injustice, but realizing that when we can't change a fact, we can always choose our response. That is real freedom. The impact is profound. By no longer resisting the unchangeable, you close invisible drains where your energy was leaking. And the strength you recover can be invested in projects, relationships, health, peace. A simple practice: each morning ask yourself, what is within my control today? Prepare to act on that, and let go of the rest. Repeated daily, this becomes a gentle armor. Epictetus said, freedom is not the power to do whatever you want, but to want what you do when the rest cannot be changed. True power is not in controlling everything, but in choosing how to live with what you cannot control. Lesson 6: Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Pain doesn't ask permission. It arrives without warning, sits at the table, and sometimes seems unwilling to leave. It shows up as loss, illness, separation, disappointment. No matter how much we try to avoid it, it's an inseparable part of life. To love, to dream, to try, these all expose us to the risk of hurt. The Stoics never promised a life without pain. But they drew a crucial distinction: pain and suffering are not the same. Pain is a real impact, physical or emotional. Suffering is the narrative we create around it. Pain is the wound. Suffering is the habit of picking at it again and again. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we make about them." A loss can be a spark. The mind decides whether it becomes a candle or a wildfire. We don't choose to feel pain, but we can choose not to turn it into a prison. The Stoics suggested describing events with objectivity. A project failed? That's pain. But saying nothing ever works out for me is already suffering. A relationship ended? The absence hurts. But replaying endlessly what could have been, that's optional suffering. The way out? Reframing. Seeing it from another angle, not to deny pain, but to restore proportion. Marcus Aurelius, in the middle of wars, wrote not to escape reality but to turn it into material for virtue. Adversity, when understood, can be a mold. The first step is to cut the dramatic narrative. Instead of saying "my life is over," say, "this hurts and it will take time." That shift in language changes how the brain interprets it. Another tool, the view from above. Imagine your life as a landscape seen from a great height. The current pain fits into a bigger picture. It doesn't vanish, but it stops dominating everything. Seneca said the real challenge is not to avoid bending under pressure, but not to remain bent. Prolonged suffering steals away finite days. Accepting pain prepares us to face it. Recognizing that suffering is optional gives us back the power to interrupt it. This isn't numbness, it's firmness. Next time something hurts, ask, "Is this pain, or am I adding suffering?" If it's pain, accept it. If it's suffering, pause and observe. Often the heaviest part of the burden is our own creation. Releasing it makes the load lighter, sometimes even transformative. The Stoics didn't aim to avoid storms, they simply refused to create extra winds. In that distinction lies one of the greatest freedoms, turning the inevitable into fuel. Lesson 7. Using obstacles as momentum. It's not always the path that needs to change. Sometimes it's the way we see what's blocking it. Marcus Aurelius summed it up in one phrase: "What stands in the way becomes the way." This isn't just an inspiring quote, it's a radical shift. For Stoicism, obstacles aren't detours. They are the path. Marcus Aurelius ruled during plague and war. Epictetus lived through slavery. Seneca endured exile and betrayal. None of them were spared from pain, but all turned adversity into a tool for growth. The obstacle is like a weight at the gym, not punishment, but an instrument of strength. This view destroys the idea that life must be easy to be valuable. On the contrary, discomfort is a teacher. Difficulties are turning points. When we adopt this perspective, we stop asking "why me?" and start asking "what can I do with this?" That change shifts us from victim to agent. Adversity becomes a step, not a wall. Thomas Edison, watching his factory burn, said, "All our mistakes are gone. Tomorrow we start fresh." That wasn't blind optimism, but disciplined thinking. It's the habit of actively looking for usefulness inside the blow. Applying this requires training the mind to search for opportunity within the problem. Ask, "What am I learning here? What skill is this demanding of me?" Even when pain can't be avoided, extracting meaning shifts your inner axis. The Stoics practiced voluntary hardship. Seneca fasted, slept on hard surfaces, not out of self-punishment, but to remind himself he didn't need comfort to live. Epictetus taught imagining adversities to prepare the mind. It wasn't worship of suffering, it was training for resilience. If a project is delayed, instead of lamenting lost time, use the delay to review and strengthen processes. Not every pain can be reframed right away. Some require mourning. But sooner or later, we can choose whether pain breaks us or shapes us. This mindset turns life into a workshop, each difficulty is a tool. Over time, what once felt like an interruption reveals itself as an essential part of the work. The path doesn't get easier, but it gains meaning. Next time you hit a barrier, ask, "How can I make this the new way forward?" Discomfort isn't the enemy of progress. Often, it's the prerequisite. Lesson 8, the paradox of strength and vulnerability. In a world that confuses strength with invulnerability, saying vulnerability is power sounds contradictory. But the Stoics showed the opposite. Fragility is not weakness, it's a path toward deeper strength, built on self-awareness and integrity, not rigid armor. Stoicism never portrayed the wise as beings without emotion. On the contrary, it acknowledged our humanity with all its limitations. Admitting vulnerability doesn't diminish you, it frees you. There are two types of vulnerability, the toxic kind, which seeks validation by oversharing without discernment, and the true kind, which grows from self-awareness and is shared selectively, where it can bring support or growth. That vulnerability is strategic. It allows you to ask for help without damaging bonds. It brings people closer through authenticity. The Stoics didn't hide their struggles. Marcus Aurelius wrote openly about his battles with anger and vanity. Epictetus acknowledged the limits of his life as a former slave. Seneca admitted fears and passions. This honesty made them stronger. Admitting weakness prevents wasting energy propping up a facade of perfection. It's like reinforcing the cracks in a building instead of pretending they don't exist. The more aware we are of our vulnerabilities, the less captive we are to them. It's not about dwelling on weaknesses, but about mapping the terrain and acting on what is within our control. Asking for help, when done wisely, is an act of courage, not weakness. Managed vulnerability makes us resilient, because it lets us prepare for failures before they become collapse. To live is not to build unbreakable walls, but to know when to open and when to close the gates. True strength doesn't come from denial, but from lucid acceptance. Lesson 9, turning criticism into fuel. Anyone who lives authentically will inevitably attract criticism. No matter how careful you are, there will always be someone who sees fault where you see effort. Criticism itself isn't the problem. The challenge lies in how we receive it. For the Stoics, criticism wasn't an attack, but raw material. It could be an obstacle that becomes a stepping stone. Marcus Aurelius said, "What obstructs the path becomes the path." Some criticism is valuable, specific, objective, focused on improvement. Others are simply projections of the critic, born out of envy or frustration. The wise learn to separate content from tone. Even when criticism comes wrapped in anger or disdain, the question remains, is there anything useful here? If yes, use it. If not, let it pass like the wind. Epictetus reminded us, it's not things themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we attach to them. An unfair critique only turns into poison if we keep replaying it in our minds. A practical approach, review feedback regularly, looking for patterns. Blind spots often reveal themselves this way. Another strategy is to anticipate criticism, imagine what people might point out, not as self-condemnation, but as preparation. And above all, manage the inner narrative. Instead of saying "I'm a failure," say "that was one person's opinion in a specific moment." Criticism then stops being a verdict and becomes information. And information, if used wisely, becomes power. The power to adjust your course, to strengthen convictions, or even to confirm that you're on the right track. Imagine each critique as a stone thrown at you. You can use it to strike back, or to build stronger character. The hardest criticisms are often the most necessary. The Stoic doesn't run from them, he grows through them. Lesson 10, living in alignment with principles. There's a quiet energy that resists time, living in harmony with your values. It's not a passing spark of enthusiasm, but a steady force born when what you think, say, and do are aligned with what you hold as essential. In this state, doubts fade, fatigue gives way to clarity, and decisions flow more naturally. Marcus Aurelius said that acting against your nature is like walking while something robs you at every step. When your actions echo your values, you gain an inner vitality that feels whole. The first step is identifying those non-negotiable values. Honesty? Courage? Justice? This discovery requires listening inward, free from others' expectations. The greater challenge is living them daily, choosing truth when silence would be easier, defending justice even in solitude. Every action in coherence strengthens your purpose. The Stoics practiced daily review. At the end of each day, they evaluated their actions, not to feel guilty, but to adjust their course. This habit prevented subtle drift. Coherence works like a compass. When your choices flow from values instead of fleeting impulses, you navigate with clarity. The path may be demanding, but it is solid. This energy grows with each aligned decision, even when no one is watching. To try this today, list 5 core values, reflect on recent choices, and before acting ask, does this bring me closer to or further from who I am? Much of our mental fatigue comes from walking against our own compass. Reconnecting with values restores energy at the root. Lesson 11: Strategic Gratitude. Gratitude is often seen as a universal virtue. But there's a shallow kind, the automatic thank you, and a disconnected kind, which tries to cover wounds with pretty words. The Stoics spoke of another kind, lucid, strategic gratitude. It doesn't ignore discomfort, it acknowledges it. It doesn't require perfection to exist. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by betrayal and illness, began his meditations by giving thanks for the people who shaped him, even those who offered bad examples. For him, gratitude didn't mean approving of harm, but recognizing that even mistakes teach. This kind of gratitude requires maturity. It sees the lack, it sees the pain, but refuses to be consumed by them. It looks at what remains, a body that endures, a mind that reasons, courage that still exists. Seneca spoke of the value of contrast. Without the night, the day would not shine so brightly. Without winter, warmth would not be so comforting. In this way, even losses make what remains more precious. A useful exercise is inverted gratitude. Imagine, even briefly, life without things you take for granted, clean water, or roof, someone who listens. This awakens genuine gratitude. The practical effect of strategic gratitude is powerful. It reorganizes energy, reduces emotional wear, restores initiative. Complaining paralyzes, gratitude frees. Over time, it becomes an emotional compass, a silent source of resilience. And the more we practice it, the more we become a source of gratitude for others. Lesson 12: Letting go of the uncontrollable. There is a hidden weight that drains our energy, trying to control the uncontrollable. We act as if we could dictate people's moods or the outcome of events. In doing so, we waste vital strength. The Stoics reminded us, suffering doesn't come from facts, but from resistance to what lies beyond our reach. Epictetus expressed this through the dichotomy of control: separate what depends on us, our thoughts, choices, actions, from what does not, others' opinions, the weather, the past. Understanding this distinction doesn't make us passive, but clear-sighted. Letting go isn't giving up, it's redirecting energy with wisdom. Many of our struggles come from insisting on the impossible. When we release that, clarity returns. A practical method: when facing discomfort, ask yourself, does this depend on me? If yes, act with courage. If not, let it go. Marcus Aurelius said, accept what life brings, and love deeply those it unites you with. Accepting and loving is not control, it's living the present authentically. Letting go is a radical act of trust, not in the promise of a happy ending, but in your own ability to adapt. True freedom doesn't lie in conquering everything, but in freeing yourself from what was never yours to control. Lesson 13: Growth through adversity. True transformation doesn't come from speeches but from quiet acts. Every gesture is a seed planted that blooms both outside and within us. This is the heart of conscious service, not motivated by applause, but by the choice to cooperate. Marcus Aurelius said, what does not benefit the hive does not benefit the bee. To live this way is to rebuild dignity and to belong to the whole. The Stoics also saw vulnerability as a gateway to strength. Epictetus refused to be defined by the scars of slavery. Marcus Aurelius turned tragedy into wisdom. The practice is reframing, replacing why me, with what can I do with this now? This shift converts weight into momentum. They also practiced voluntary adversity, fasting, enduring discomfort, not out of masochism, but to train the mind. In modern life, this might mean waiting without irritation, facing difficult conversations, or resisting comforts that numb us. Psychology calls this post-traumatic growth. For them, it was intuition. After each challenge, set aside a moment to reflect. What did I learn? What strength emerged? How did this shape me? This transforms vulnerability into emotional capital. Lesson 14, Serving Consciously. Transformation is gradual. It doesn't come from leaps, but from accumulated choices. When we realize that every gesture can be a seed that blooms in us and in others, we begin to understand the power of conscious service. To serve is an act of freedom, a choice about where to invest our energy. In a world that glorifies taking, conscious service says, I choose to add. And in doing so, we grow richer. This journey also recognizes vulnerability as a gateway to true strength. Epictetus turned limitations into philosophy. Marcus Aurelius found in writing the raw stone from which to carve his life. Adversity, when faced with presence, awakens unexpected abilities. It is not about seeking pain, but integrating it. True strength doesn't boast. It reveals itself in those who have walked through storms and remain standing. This silent strength makes us a genuine presence for others, not someone who teaches from a distance, but one who inspires by living what they teach. Lesson 15, Strength is born from integrity. We live in times that celebrate flexibility. But adapting too much can erode something essential, principles. There is a territory within us that must never be negotiated. There lie the values which, if broken, destroy self-trust. The Stoics knew, true power doesn't come from controlling the outside, but from preserving integrity within. Epictetus said, nothing external can harm us without our consent. The danger lies in betraying our values for convenience. The price is the loss of self-respect. Non-negotiable values must act as beacons. They are not rigidity, but dynamic integrity, flexibility in the non-essential, firmness in the essential. Write down your red lines. Prepare for temptations by anticipating them. Every time you choose coherence over convenience, you grow stronger. Inner suffering is born from acting against yourself. Integrity generates energy, clarity, and peace. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, what does not benefit the hive does not benefit the bee. Conscious service reconnects us to the whole. A practical exercise, each morning, define one intentional act of service. It can be simple, offering help, comforting someone, preparing something with care. These gestures shift our perception from scarcity to silent abundance. And this energy renews itself every day we choose coherence. Conclusion. If you've made it this far, write gratitude in the comments. That way I'll know you stayed until the end. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now. Stoicism is full of practical wisdom for everyday life. Each lesson here can be applied in real ways, not just as theory. Keep learning. I'll see you in the next video.